We had to pick out our dresses. He goes, you pick out whatever style you want. Whatever style you want. Just have my favorite color. Whatever style. I said, all right. What's your favorite color? Pumpkin spice. That's not even that's a drink at Starbucks. Wait a minute, whoa. You got 7 big bitches in your wedding. And you choose pumpkin spice? We look like angry jack-o'-lanterns walking down the aisle. Boo! Boo!
I've lived in New York for 9 years. I love New York. Yeah. I'm not afraid to be controversial. I love New York. I love to be in the West Village with like a pashmina and a hot coffee just late to something, you know? I love to be lost in a sweater. I love to just be in a huge baggy sweater, just like exhausted. It's really where I come alive. It's my best look. Yeah, someone relates. There's literally one gay person here. But it really facilitates my favorite style of acting, which you, sir, will appreciate. It's called sweater acting, and I want to do it for you guys right now. If you have a sweater at home, you can do this too. Just bring the sweater down to your knuckles. Always have your shoulders up. Always be squinting. Mess up your hair. I would mess up my hair more, but there's industry just teeming everywhere. Anyway, so the shoulders up. I need to get a running start. This is called sweater acting. Here we go. Sweater acting. Hey. I just want to say I think it's really cool what you did back there. Those guys were jerks. And she can defend herself. I mean, how could she? She's blind. Anyway, I should get... Right, my name, I always forget. It's, Okay, that was Blake Lively. Thank you. That was Amy Jo Johnson in Felicity. That was Neve Campbell in everything she's ever done. It's very much, it's acting from the collarbone, right? It's the vocal quality of choking on almond milk.
I lost my virginity in college on a Halloween night while watching a movie, and I've learned since then that there's no good movie to have on in the background of sex. I lost my virginity on a Halloween night while watching the movie Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus is a movie about 3 witches starring Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy in the role of a lifetime. And a lot of guys come too quickly the first time they have sex. I lasted 45 minutes out of pure stress and anxiety. I ended up coming when Bette Midler was singing a Broadway version of I Put a Spell on You. Really weird. A weird night. I just watched that movie again recently. No joke, 2 weeks ago for the first time since that night. And 2 things happened. One, I realized, great movie. Still totally holds up. Very funny, very self-aware. And 2 is that I immediately got rock hard and came when it started.
Only good thing about winter is that it's cuffing season, and your girl was a cuffing season all-star. Because this is when my people, and when I say my people, I mean fat. And if a single one of you white women comes up to me after this fucking show going, you're not fat, you're beautiful. Bitch, I know that. One does not cancel out the other. We've all seen ugly, skinny people. Quit fucking with me. But this is a special time of year where skinny chicks take a knee because they can't keep anybody warm at night. I've been on Pinterest stocking up, recipes, getting that Netflix queue ready. We finna cuddle, okay? Laying next to me with an electric blanket, you'll never leave.
Grew up with the fucked up costume. You remember those days? That plastic shitty mask with that string in the back just cutting through your fucking skull. And then there was a little slit for you to breathe in, but you would only stick your tongue through it. And they couldn't hear you say trick or treat.
But trick-or-treating, that would have been the ultimate, right? Trick-or-treating could have been the ultimate thing, but then your parents got to give you that safety speech. I think that took some of the fun out of it. You know, you're finally old enough to go trick-or-treating by yourself, and then they got to give you that talk. Like, all right, son, just go door to door and get the candy. That's all you got to do. Just go get the candy. Knock on the door, go to the next house, get more candy, and it's all yours. Get to keep it all. Have fun, get lots of candy. Oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to tell you, son. Be careful, because the candy might have razor blades in it. Oh my God. What a horrible thing to tell an 18-year-old.
I hate Halloween, you know. My favorite day is the day after Halloween, because that's when you see all the sexy girls in the costumes doing the walk of shame back home. I love it. Because a sexy kitten isn't sexy anymore, you know. She's got a broken ear. The sexy bunny is missing a tail. They look like the abused pet commercials from the Sarah McLachlan, you know. Like, oh. This sexy cat lost its tail banging a pirate, you know?
I haven't been able to live at my house for a month because it's been infested with ghosts. And I have told the landlord, he doesn't believe me. I've talked to the superintendent, he told me to go to hell. I've contacted everybody and nobody believes me. But listen to this, I have proof. What do I find behind the fridge? Oh, I don't have a ghost problem? What are these, huh? What are these? Ghost poops. Ghost poops. Behind the fridge. I go under my bed. Ghost poops. All over the house. Oh, I'm crazy? I'm crazy? What are these? What are these? I ordered some ghost fighting equipment online. It shows up in a giant box that these ghosts have taken a shit in.
My sex move of choice is called the maple syrup. It's when, after making love to a girl, you let her fall peacefully asleep, and you leave. You go outside to the woods behind your house, and you gather the buckets of maple sap that's been collecting from the trees. You then bring it inside and boil it down on the stove, extracting the hard sugars. And then, the next morning, you serve it to her over a hot stack of buttermilk pancakes. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
You ever meet someone, you're at a Thanksgiving dinner, somebody says something, it's racist or it's sexist or it's homophobic, but you don't want to stop the dinner and give them a 20-minute dissertation. How can I say in 3 seconds I don't approve with what's coming out of your dumb mouth? So what you do is you ask how old they are. You go, how old are you? And they're like, why? Are you the word police? Go, no. And then you sell it like a right? You go, no, I'm not the word police. I hate people like that. Say whatever you want. I'm just saying, you say shit old people say. That's all. But anyway, hey, could you pass the gravy? And they're like, oh, he's not even mad at me. He just says I'm old. I hate it. Yeah, and that's passive progressive is what I like to call it.
I don't know if you guys have tried to get a 20-something dude from a dating app to wear a condom lately, but it's sort of like trying to convince a 5-year-old to put a jacket on over his Halloween costume. Here, put this on for me. No! You're gonna ruin it! You can't even see it!
So here's the story. I'm just gonna put my leg up here to air my pussy out. Because it's hot in here. So here's the story. Believe it or not, I grew up Christian, and I've come a long way. One of my greatest needs in life when I was 8 years old was to celebrate Halloween. And my family got saved and then all that shit stopped. You know what I'm saying? My grandmother found the Lord and then we couldn't have candy. Because that's how this shit go. Like, we would participate to try to appease people, but then it was just awkward, right? Because my grandmother would give out Bible tracts instead of candy. And if you don't know what Bible tracts are, those are like little cartoons that tell you you're going to hell. So they would TP our house. It was the whole thing. Then they said, okay, let's start bunkering in and cut the lights off. And still we was getting dead cats everywhere. So by the time I was 8 years old and I wanted to celebrate Halloween, my grandmother disappeared, you know, because she was tired. You know what I mean? I think she went to the mall and was like, fuck it. You know what I mean? So I'm at home. It's me, my grandfather, and my aunt. Now, my aunt was one of my best friends growing up, okay, because she was very childlike. I was a child, but she wasn't a child. What happened, my grandmother had German measles when she was carrying her, so she had brain damage and hearing impairment, okay? So there was a lot of developmental delays with her, so we were sort of like on the same mental wave, and she was one of my best friends growing up. Now, I don't know who the fuck laughed at that, but fuck you. Now, what happened was, one year I was like, I gotta fucking do this Halloween shit because time's getting up. You know what I'm saying? My titties are coming in. Like, I gotta do this shit now. It's like now or never. You know what I mean? And I'm like, my grandmother ain't here, so now let me go hustle my grandfather. Because my grandfather's an easy hustle. First of all, he was only saved at the time because my grandmother was saved and he knew that was the only way he could get pussy. You know what I mean? So he's into the Lord now, but then it was like, you know, we teetering on this thing. So I went upstairs to ask him if I could go and do a light trick-or-treat, you know what I mean? And it was the perfect time to ask, because he watched 60 Minutes of like sports and shit. So if you ask him doing 60 Minutes of the sports, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can do coke, you know what I mean? You kill cats. He don't care. Go outside, do whatever you do. I'm busy. Dan Rather's doing something. Oh, okay, good. Thank you, Dan. So I asked him, I said, Pop, I want to do Halloween. You know what I mean? Let's go out. Me and Jackie, we'll go out, she'll watch me. We'll just go do a quick thing and come back. All right. Don't tell your grandmother. I said, okay. He said, also, don't go around to the apartments. Now, here's the thing. I grew up in an area, we had houses, and we had these apartments that came, you know, years and years later. Now, you couldn't go to the apartments because they was doing crack and shit over there at the apartments. They didn't want you to go over the apartments and have fun. So, you know what I mean? So I said, okay, we won't do it. We'll just go house to house and we'll come back. Now, we didn't have any costumes, all right? So I asked my grandfather if we could borrow a shirt or something. He didn't want to give us a shirt, so he gave us, you know, little black trash bags you put leaves in when you rake up shit. He put those on us and cut the eyes out. Me and my aunt looked like we was nigga ghosts. So, but we're not gonna argue because we going outside, you know? So he's like, all right, make sure you don't go around the apartments, just, you know, walk around in the house. I said, okay, perfect. And I was like, this is the perfect thing, because we're the most dynamic duo, you know? I, a hustler, clearly, getting Halloween, in the body of a child, but the mind of a hustler. My aunt, in the body of an adult, but like a child like mine. You know what I'm saying? We was like a nigga transformer. So, now, we go around, we going trick-or-treat. Now, trick-or-treat started to become boring in my side of the area because all these people are giving out, like, peppermints, butterscotch. You know, I want the good shit, you know, but you can't get that shit at the houses with these bougie niggas. They trying to do the uppity shit, you know what I mean? So I'm like, fuck, I gotta get around these apartments. And then I start hearing other kids say, oh, there's a man over at the apartments giving out IOUs. And I was like, shit, we gotta go over there, because that's like 2 days of Halloween to kids. He giving out IOUs, we go back the next day, more candy. So I was like, damn, how we gonna get over to these apartments? Because I ain't supposed to go. And here's the thing about my aunt. You know, sometimes when people have like a developmental problem, you put them on one thing and they know not to do it, they won't do it. So she know we can't go over to the apartment, so I'm trying to get her to go to the apartment. She's like, well, we can't do it. And I'm like, no, we gotta go. And she said, no, Pop said don't go. So only thing I knew to tell her was that grandma told us to go look for Jesus at the apartments, okay? So I said, Jesus over at the apartments, let's go over to the apartments and find the Lord for grandma, okay? So then she was on board. We get over to the apartments, oh my God. It was a heaven, okay? They got the best candy. You know, crackheads always have the best candy because they need something to cut their high. You know what I mean? So they had like Boston Chews. They had the little packs of cigarettes. Remember the little candy cigarettes? I thought I was a pimp. I'm walking around smoking and puffing cigarettes, going door to door, trick or treat. What's up, nigga? Give me something in my bag. You know what I mean? Hustling. Give me a little something. And we decide now we gonna save the man with the IOUs for last. So we go get all the candy. Finally, towards the end of the night, we go up to the guy's house that got the IOUs. I said, all right, we're gonna get these IOUs. We're gonna come back tomorrow. We're gonna have another day on Halloween. We get up there and say trick or treat. This guy take a look at us. He said, all right, I got say your trick or treat, what's up? I said, you know what's up. You know what the hell, we want these IOUs. He took a look, he looked us up and down. Hold on a second, I got something for y'all. He went back in his apartment. He come out a minute later. He got in a little bag some candy corn that he gave us. First of all, I can't stand candy corn, okay? And number two, fuck your candy corn. I want some IOUs, all right? I want another day on Halloween. I said, listen, sir, nothing against your candy, but I want your IOUs. He said, I don't have no more IOUs. I said, what the hell you mean you ain't got no more IOUs? Now, I didn't say hell, but I was tight about it. You know what I mean? It's simple to write an IOU. Go in there, get a piece of paper and a pencil, and write IOU. It's very simple. Matter of fact, I'll go back home and get some paper and a pencil and write it for you yourself. You can just hand it to us. You understand? He said, no, I'm out of it. Try again next year. I said, all right. I said, you know what, man? Forget you, man. We went back to the house. I was so disappointed. I said, fuck that. So I go to school the next day. I'm walking to the bus stop, and all these kids talking about, yeah, you know, we about to go get us another day of Halloween. We got our IOUs. And I'm like, shit, I ain't got no IOU, but whatever, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? I got my candy. I was disappointed the whole damn day. I come back home. My grandfather's waiting outside. Now, here's the thing about my grandfather. He never put clothes on no matter what, okay? So he's standing out in the driveway with his slippers on and his underwear, looking crazy as hell. Get in this house. And I was like, oh shit, what's going on? I say, get in this house right now. I go in the house and say, oh shit, maybe Jackie told that we ran these damn apartments, but I don't know where she is to eyeball her to see if she spilled the beans. So I'm trying to kind of hold myself together. So I get in the kitchen and he got my crayon set sitting there and he got a piece of paper and he's drawing 2 stick figures on the piece of paper. He said, I want you to look at this paper. You see this? I said, oh, yeah, I see it. He said, you see that? I said, yeah. He said, this is a girl and this is a boy. I'm tell you about the birds and the bees. I said, okay. Don't let a man put his this in your that. You hear what I said? Don't you let no man put his this in your that. And I was like, all right, I don't know, who's this man? I don't know what's going on, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, already I done fucking got a no Halloween IOU shit, and now I got to hear this shit about some this and damn that, okay? So I said, all right. He said, I'm telling you this because did you go around them apartments yesterday? Did you go around to them apartments? And I said, no, sir, I did not. Now, I'm lying because I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me see what's up. I said, no, I did not go to the apartments. He said, you sure you didn't go around them apartments yesterday? I said, all right, listen, I did, but it was all fine, okay? We came back. You see, I'm standing in front of you right now. Fine. He said, no, it's not fine. The cops was over there today. They said there was a man out there giving on IOUs. Over there trying to touch little kids. And that's why I told you not to go over there. Now, did he try to give you an IOU? I said, no, I went to the man's house and he gave me and Jackie a damn bag of candy corn. What the fuck was wrong with me? Right? Me and my handicap aunt, we was a perfect pedophile paradise. What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay? And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the first time I was rejected by a man. Thank you.